Today we're going to discuss developing a winning talent brand strategy for small and mid-sized businesses. So before we start, I'd love to understand who we've got in the room today. So if anyone comes from a company of 1,000 employees or less, raise your hand. Awesome, I love it. 1,000 to 5,000 employees? Great, and 5,000 employees plus. Awesome, it's great. So today we're actually going to talk about ways that Suncor and NPR developed a winning talent brand. Now you're probably wondering, Suncor is an energy company and NPR is a non-profit organisation. What do they have in common? What's interesting, as I was really privileged to work with these three professionals, as we started to really peel the layers and understand the foundations and principles they applied, it was really similar in the approach that they both took. And so what we're going to talk about is ways that they both successfully developed a talent brand and went to market to really become a thought leader in their industry. So I'm privileged to welcome Stephanie Ryan from Suncor, Lauren LaRose from Suncor, and Lars Schmidt from NPR.org. And myself, I'm Tabitha Reid. I work at LinkedIn for the last couple of years, and I'm actually been moderating this panel for today. So what you're going to learn. So today we're actually going to go over a couple of things, but the three key takeaways that you're going to get from today's session is one, learning how to really get that executive buy-in. So really developing that business case internally that you can go to your leaders and get that buy-in from leadership to go to market. The second thing is really developing a foundation for a strong talent brand that really makes you that talent brand attractive place to work, where external candidates are starting to come to you so you're not reactively going out to them. And the last thing, which I think is most key, is around measuring success. So if you can't measure it, you can't fix it. And it's really key today. What we're going to share is how NPR and Suncor defined key performance metrics of what they looked at as success, but also ways that they can optimize things that weren't so successful. So with that said, I'm going to hand it over to Stephanie to talk about Suncor.
So please rise while we sing the Canadian National Anthem. Anyone here from Canada?
Nice.
Anyone here know Suncor? Okay. Anyone here think Suncor is a small business? Because we're not. Probably a little bit mismarketed, but I love how Tabitha introduced the fact that what we did in creating a talent brand really is a framework that you can use as you develop a talent brand for your organization. So we really are excited to share this with you. So first, let me tell you a little bit about Suncor Energy. So if you heard the guy from Pepsi, and he had Beyonce, so we have this fabulous engineer. This is a picture of our head office in Calgary, Alberta, and what this tells you is all Suncor employees are attractive, and it's always sunny in Calgary. Always, the picture tells 1,000 words. So Suncor Energy, we're Canada's largest integrated energy company, and we're 5th largest in North America. We have 14,000 employees, or 3 groups of 5,000 employees, if we want to sound a bit smaller. What we do as an integrated energy company is we are the full value chain of energy production, from exploration to refining to sales. We have our own gas station network, the Petro-Canada brand. We do a lot of work in the oil sands in northern Alberta, which is a big hiring challenge for us. We have offshore East Coast production in Newfoundland, and we also have work in Europe. From a hiring perspective, though, head office is in Calgary. Fort McMurray, Alberta is where we hire a lot of people, and it's a big challenge. So if you think about hiring people for an organization that runs the complete value chain. Oh, do you like the flag that we put down there for the US, in case you didn't know? So if you think about an organization like ours running the full value chain of energy production, we're looking for a lot of people, and we're looking for people that are engineers, geoscientists, geophysicists, as well. Because our operations are in a remote location, we fly our people to site. We run our own airline, we hire pilots, we hire flight attendants, we keep our employees up there in hotel type accommodations, so we're hiring restaurant people, etc. And when you think about looking for all of these type of people, what is that talent brand going to look like? How are you going to talk to people about what it's like to work for an organization when you're looking for such a broad spectrum of folks? So the work that we did was developing a mid-career campaign, and our campaign is go ahead, expect. I want to show you a 30-second video to give you an idea of what that looks like, and hopefully you can pick out some of the key messages that we use for our talent brand.
It's beyond words how cool it is to run it. I love the sound of the trucks, the sound of the whistles, everything about it.
I often say it to people, this is the Silicon Valley of the North. If you want to be an engineer and you want a career, this is the place to be in.
People who join Suncor join a community where we value each other and we support each other. So it's a great place to work. It's a great place to be.
So that's a little bit of a taste of the value proposition in our campaign that we're going to talk to you about here today. And I'm going to pass it over to Lars from NPR to tell you a bit about his organization.
Thank you. So again, my name is Lars Schmidt. Hopefully this isn't awkward. Apparently we're all standers. So we're all just going to be like standing near chairs. And if it's off-putting, we apologize. So I run recruiting innovation at NPR. We do not have our own airline, unfortunately, so we'll be on the smaller size of the spectrum. How many of you are familiar with NPR? Okay, home team, all right. So NPR is formerly known as National Public Radio. We actually changed the name about 2 years ago at a time when our organization was really transitioning from a pure radio and broadcast entity to be more of a digital player. So radio and broadcast is still really at the forefront of the fabric of who we are, and it's in our DNA, but our organization is evolving. People are consuming content in different ways. For some people, that's still in their car, on their commute to work. For other people, it's streaming. For other people, it's online. For other people, it's through social. It's through podcasts. So as a media company, it's really important that we evolve with the changing consumption habits of our fans. So we have about 850 employees, primarily based in Washington, D.C., where we have our headquarters. We also have offices in Chicago, New York, Boston, and Los Angeles, and 18 international bureaus throughout the world. So when it comes to looking at talent brand, it's interesting. When we all got together, it was, we all thought the same thing that all of you probably thought, like NPR and Suncor, like, okay, and we went through that process too, but I think as we got to know more about each of our tactics and our strategy, we really realized that while our circumstances were different, while our challenges were different, while our desired outcomes were even different, the underlying foundation of how we went about tackling building a talent brand was actually very similar. So with that, I have to match video for video. My video is actually going to be static pictures set to video, so it's a little less cool, but that's fine. For those of you that are familiar with All Things Considered, this is Robert Siegel talking about what NPR means to him.
I'm Robert Siegel, host of All Things Considered, where I have one invariable standard. If I didn't work here, would I want to listen? If I were just a listener, would I want to hear that question posed to that person, that story, that phrase? If I wouldn't, why would you? We don't think of you as a target demographic. We think of you as curious people like us. And in broadcasting today, this is something special. This is NPR.
And that was Robert Siegel.
Great. Thanks, Lars. So before we jump into it, I want to set the stage around the framework. So we talked about peeling that layer, both for Suncor and NPR. And what we came out with was a 4-step framework that you can actually apply to your small and mid-sized business. So first it starts with really defining a talent brand. Now talent brand is a buzzword, so just to set the baseline, talent brand is that really highly social employer brand that external and internal candidates can talk and interact and share information about your company. It can be a significant asset when it comes to hiring and retaining talent, but it can also be a liability if we're not really managing that social channel. So it's all about defining what your brand is in the social media sphere. The second step was really gaining that executive buy-in. So once again, when it starts from the top and you have that leadership buy-in, it's really easy to push it down and get the team rallied around it and your employees as ambassadors. The third was develop and execute. Get out there, have fun, pilot, take risks. NPR and Suncorp did that, and you'll find out today how they exactly implemented it and came back and optimized. And once again, measure and optimize. So come back, look at your key performance metrics, and make sure you're set up for success. So I'm going to hand it over to Lauren about step 1 for defining your talent brand. Thank you.
Thanks, Tabitha. I have to say it was really cool this morning walking in and seeing the DJ at the session. In Calgary, we have the Stampede, and we have a lot of parties like that around then, so I was expecting to see some cowboy hats and that kind of thing, but it was pretty tame, so hopefully tonight it gets a little bit more fun. So step 1 in defining your talent brand, for us was really about research. We spent a lot of time on this step doing research with our internal employees, to find out what it's really like to work at our organization, and also with our external target audience to find out what really attracts people to our company. So we did a lot of different research, and there's just some examples here, both qualitative and quantitative. We did a lot of surveys with our internal employees to find out what it's like in their jobs, what really gets them up in the morning. We used LinkedIn Recruiter, all the data available on LinkedIn, to help us heat map where geographically our target audiences lived. We conducted a lot of different focus groups, including what are called blind focus groups, and that's where the participants don't know who the research is for, so they're able to give really open and honest feedback, and that helps you to understand what really differentiates your company and how you compare. And as we went along, all the creative we were developing, we were testing it to see what was resonating and what wasn't. So all of this research really started to lay it out for us. We knew that Suncor has a lot of good things going for it to attract people to our company. You know, we're Canadian owned and operated. We have big growth plans, which means opportunities for now and in the future. We have a company culture where people can really grow, contribute, and succeed together. And we're just known for doing right by our communities, by the environment, and by our people. We also found out a lot of the things that we knew we would have to address and overcome in order to attract the people we want to our company. So we were going to have to be really honest about what it's like to work in a remote, northern Alberta industrial town that is freezing cold most of the time. We knew that we were going to have to be honest about the oil sands and some of the misperceptions, to overcome them. We also had to recognize the fact that outside of Alberta, Suncor just isn't very well known. So when we're looking across Canada and internationally, we were going to really have to build our brand. We learned a couple really important things about our audiences too. Since this was a mid-career brand, we found out that what motivates people to leave one job for another is really personal networks and word of mouth. So we knew this is going to be a very important step in our talent brand. So when you're going through this step at your organization, our recommendation would be to be very honest with yourself so you get a really good picture about the good, the bad, and the ugly to build your talent brand from.
And so I think with NPR, you know, our approach in the setup was very similar. We really did a broad kind of SWOT analysis. What we're primarily focused on our strengths and our challenges. So as context, I joined NPR about 2.5 years ago as part of a rebuilding effort. They were rebuilding the entire HR team and brought me in to have that responsibility over the talent function. And so I came in and I really spent the first 6 months kind of getting acclimated and assessing, you know, what are we working with? What do we have to build? And so for us, we had a lot of unique challenges that I'll get to in a minute, but what was our foundation? What was our strengths? We have a rich 42-year history as a broadcaster. We have a lot of very deep and loyal fan affinity. People take out ads on dating sites saying, I'm looking to date an NPR listener. That tells you that it's a lifestyle to those people. So how do we tap into that engagement? So we looked at that. We also looked at our staff. You know, we have a really smart and diverse staff, and as a media company, we have a staff that's very well tuned to social media and tools and digital technologies. So in my mind, I'm starting to go, social media. Social media can help us. Social media can help us extend the reach of our recruiting team. Speaking of the recruiting team, we're really lean. I mentioned we're a nonprofit. So for our team, it's myself running the team. We have one senior recruiter, and we have a senior coordinator. So it's a team of 3 overseeing recruiting. We're not a massively high volume hiring shop. We hire about 120 people a year. But that kind of gives you the sense of the scale of the resources we have to work with. So once I kind of assessed what our primary strengths were, it was a matter of shifting now and looking at our challenges. And we have challenges. So some of the challenges that we had to really overcome and consider when we were developing our talent brand, one, we're a nonprofit. We're recruiting against blue chip for-profit. So when you look at journalism, we're recruiting against New York Times, CNN, Washington Post, ABC, startups like Circa that are coming up and disrupting our industry. So there's a lot of corporate organizations that tend to have deeper pockets than a nonprofit might. Though we are highly competitive, that's a tough challenge. We also had a growing technology group. So technology is really a big part of who we are as an organization today. And when we're recruiting technologists, we're up against Google, we're up against Facebook, we're up against LinkedIn. Sorry, Tabitha. It's competitive, and we need to find ways to really differentiate ourselves. How are we going to win in those markets? We also have a scenario where when we're recruiting journalists, we can lean on that 42-year history. Journalists know who NPR is, and if they appreciate our style of journalism and storytelling, they're drawn to that. So that's a great tool to lean on. When we're recruiting in new areas, so whether it's technologists or even younger generations don't quite listen to radio like older generations do. And so when we're trying to penetrate those markets, it was really important for us to figure out how do we become relevant to those groups. And lastly, the media landscape is shifting. Media is being disrupted all over the place. Print media is contracting. Radio and audio storytelling is contracting in a lot of areas. And so how do we compete with that? It's important that we're bringing in progressive, cutting-edge talent to help us figure out where our business is going next. Because again, the way that the consumption habits are changing, a lot of people still listen to radio. A lot of people, and especially younger generations, don't. So it's vital that we're really in those spaces where they are. So I think when you have your strategy established, that's really step one. So for us, it was a strategy that really focused heavily on social media and employment branding. So now that you have your strategy established, the next step is to really focus on getting the executive buy-in. As you all know, you can have the best idea in the world. You're going to have to sell it to somebody. Someone's going to have to buy into your idea to launch it. And if you can't get that buy-in, you're not getting really far. So, for us, we kind of broke it into a couple sections. We developed a strategic plan. What are we looking to do? Why are we looking to do it? For us, we knew that we had a lean recruiting team. We knew we had lean resources. We knew that we needed to enter new markets, and social media was going to help us do that. But we needed to be able to determine what that story was so that we could sell that. The next step is actually getting the executive buy-in. So this is really one of the most crucial steps in building any talent brand. And especially for us, we had a strategy that leaned heavily on social media. There's no organization on the planet that has HR being the stakeholder for social media for the organization, unless they're an HR company, perhaps. But it's marketing, it's communications, you have all these different stakeholders. So for you in HR, you've got to get out of HR, you've got to sell your ideas. And selling your ideas is really about selling you. They have to buy into you. They have to respect you. They have to appreciate that you're not going to be reckless with their brand. They have to appreciate that you know what you're doing. And so that takes time, and it takes relationships. So I think any talent brand strategy, you've really got to focus on building those relationships. And then lastly, pilot. Pilot's probably my favorite word in employer branding. I think a lot of times, no matter how big or small your idea is, when you're pitching it, you're almost automatically going to meet some resistance coming in. So rather than saying, yes, I'm going to roll out this program to every employee in the organization right at the gates and it's unproven, say, no, I'm going to pilot it. We're going to start small. And if it grows, we're going to scale. And if it fails, we'll scrap it. But in this environment, in particular as you're looking at social media, you've got to be able to experiment. You've got to be able to try things. There's no exact playbook, and there's no social media expert that can tell you do exactly this, and it's going to work every time. We're all figuring things out. You've got to be able to pilot, experiment, start small, and scale as you grow.
Lars, you lied to us. You do have pilots.
Ba-dum-ba. And with that, let me transition it over to my colleagues at Suncor.
So as we were getting ready to do this, in my head, I'm like, don't say anything inappropriate, don't say anything inappropriate. So if I do, Lauren has our safe word that she's going to enact. So if you hear double pineapple, you'll know why. And sadly, that really is our safe word. So, thanks, Lars, for that. I hope this format is working for folks as we built this out as a framework. And we said if it's not, it was Lars's idea. And if it is, it was Lauren and my idea. So, step 2, executive buy-in. Just to give you the story of executive buy-in at Suncor, it was a bit of a different experience than the NPR one. Suncor was created in 2009 as it exists today when 2 large organizations merged. It was the largest merger in Canadian history, creating this organization called Suncor when Petro-Canada and Suncor merged. And we have a strong growth profile. So now we have this organization that needs to hire in some key markets that nobody knows. In addition, when we talked about the experience of looking for people in Northern Alberta, it's a really competitive labor market, and some great companies are here at this conference today that we compete for talent for. And knowing that we're looking for a scarcity of supply for folks to go up to that Northern Alberta area to work means how are we going to do that, and how are we going to do that successfully? Our company, too, we have big growth plans. So currently we produce 500,000 barrels of oil a day, and we have a disciplined growth plan to increase that number quite significantly. So really the challenge for us was not so much how do we get executive buy-in. The challenge for us was our executive and our board of directors were coming to us and saying, how are you going to solve this talent crisis? So it wasn't so much for us how, can we get access to the resources we need to make this happen? It was, how are you going to make this happen? And it was layering on an approach that was not traditionally an HR approach. So we didn't need just a pretty ad campaign to bring people in. We knew we were going to need some deep programmatic approach in order to be successful. And I was director of the talent acquisition group at the time. My background is actually communications and marketing and not human resources. And I think one of the reasons why I was put into this role was to bring forward this type of program. So that, to me, so if I was sitting there in your shoes saying, well, yeah, that's great, you got the executive going, give me a program and access to resources, I would say take a scan of what you're looking at from your organization's perspective. Are you launching a new product? What's happening in your competitive marketplace that's going to be a sell feature for you? And then the bottom piece, we're just saying, once you've sold this to the executive team, you need to keep communication flowing and going in order to be no surprises at the end of the day, because that can really throw your program for a loop. So I'm going to turn it over to Lauren to talk about the develop and execute stage.
Thanks, Steph. Okay, so step 3, this is where it starts to get really interesting for me. This is where I got a job, so this is fun. Step 3 is really putting your talent brand into market. And we had developed our Go Ahead campaign, and we couldn't wait to get it into market, but we had to look at a couple things. So we started first with our online career center, because it's really like the nerve center for our campaign. Every job post, every radio ad, every LinkedIn company update is driving traffic to our careers site. And getting that properly configured was really important. So we worked super closely with our e-coms team to make sure that our web pages are search engine optimized, that they have rich media content that's telling our brand story in a really authentic way. Google just had an energy conference in Calgary a couple weeks ago, and they were sharing some data with us, and 35% of the search engine results for oil sands jobs are Suncor pages. So we've come a really far way in optimizing our pages, and it's really paying off. It's driving a lot of traffic. We also created a microsite called GoAheadFortMac.com that gives people a virtual tour of that Fort McMurray town so that they can see that there's shopping, there's some restaurants, there's some rec centers, there's trails. They can really start to imagine what their life would be like if they lived there. And foundational to our entire campaign is testimonial-style videos. So we did close to 30 employee testimonial videos with people across the company. You saw some of them in the video that we showed at the beginning. And it's really there to help build those virtual networks and that word-of-mouth style kind of recruiting online. Next, we got into social media, and LinkedIn was a really obvious choice for us because we knew that personal networks and word of mouth is so important. So we've been on LinkedIn pretty actively for just over 2 years, and I should have 70,000 followers any minute now. So it's a really great platform for us. And then we started to look at the other channels, and when we looked at Facebook and what was happening on Facebook when we weren't owning our presence there, other people were doing it for us. So there was all these rogue groups that were popping up, and there was one that was a Suncor Engineering Co-op student group, and they had a bikini model as their cover photo. So it was really not the branding that we wanted and the types of messaging for people to find out about Suncor when they're looking for us. So we dove into Facebook really quickly, one, to really be owning our brand presence on that channel, and two, because it's another great place to network and build those personal connections with our target audience. We took a little bit more time getting into Twitter just to ensure that we were resourced to do it and really have the rich kind of content that we want to be sharing to be engaging with our audience. We still developed a whole suite of print and radio collateral because in some of our markets and for some of our trades and operator type roles, it's still a very effective medium. And we also still developed a really robust event strategy that helps us once again build those personal networks, but also to raise awareness about Suncor in some of our key markets. Our employee referral campaign was a really big component too. We really wanted to put our Suncor employees at the center of our brand and build them as ambassadors for us. So we revamped that campaign to go along with our Go Ahead campaign. So it's Go Ahead, Introduce Us, and we use that to really help leverage those personal networks within Suncor. And finally, I really have a job because I'm here to constantly look at what's changing, and this stuff is happening so quickly, and we want to be as effective with our spend as possible, so we have to be watching what's new, what's coming up, how are people receiving their information, and how can we ensure that we're targeting our messaging to our audience in a really effective way. So that's it for us, and I'll let Lars talk about his experience at NPR.
Thanks. So for us at NPR, as I mentioned, our strategy really focused heavily around social media to build our employer brand. So, we looked at, and social media initially is the big three, right? So for us, the big three is LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. We've had a presence on LinkedIn for years. In particular, last year when they rolled out the new branding platform for companies, we started really using that much more aggressively, and we've seen our follower growth skyrocket from that. So I think we're just over 75,000 followers on LinkedIn now, and it's our number 3 source of applicant. So we are getting a tremendous amount of traffic coming our way through LinkedIn. From a social standpoint, Twitter was really where we started. I guess, outside of LinkedIn, Twitter was the first network that we got involved with. We launched NPR Jobs in July of 2011, and that's actually grown to be one of our larger social media campaigns and social media engines. So I think right now it's our number 7 source of applicants, but number 4 source of hire. So think about that for a minute. Number 4 source of hire. Our number 1 source of hire is internal hires. Our number 2 is referrals. Our number 3 is career site. Our number 4 is Twitter. And as a nonprofit with no budget for lots of job boards and things like that, that's a really meaningful stat. So, a lot of you out there, you hear the struggle all the time when it comes to social media. How do I present the ROI to this? Right? I need to get ROI so I can present that to my leadership team and get buy-in. When you can demonstrate that these tools can help you draw talent more effectively than job boards, and ultimately for us, I'll talk about in a minute, we cut about $100,000 per year out of our budget, which was already lean. We're a nonprofit, if I didn't mention that before. We're a nonprofit, lean resources. So we cut that out, and that's really based on the growth of the social channels. So Facebook as well, over 70,000 likes. For us, our Facebook page, we have the editorial Facebook page, which has over 2 million fans, but that's facebook.com/NPR. That's really purely an editorial platform. So I worked with our communications team to create another page called This is NPR. And that's really more of an inside look at the organization from a marketing standpoint, from a branding standpoint. So these are social channels, but you have other tools in your belt. If you're not heavily involved as an organization in social media, that doesn't mean that you can't invest in your talent brand. So looking at other channels, there's other ways to do it. Blogs are a great way to extend your talent brand. And our journey towards blogs, when we redid our career site a couple months back, I really wanted to create a blog. because I love the engagement we were getting through Twitter and even the comment section on LinkedIn and other platforms. But I wanted something where we could do longer form content, and that's obviously great for what blogs do. Our digital team was really lean. They didn't have the bandwidth to build out a blog functionality on the new page. So I pounded sand, because I was really sad about that. And then I was recommended by a colleague, hey, why don't you just build a Tumblr? Tumblr's free. It's hip with the kids these days, It's lots of Gen Y traffic on Tumblr. So I did that. I created that. And now we have a no-cost solution that I can use as a blogging resource. Your career site as well. So, all of you use your career site to build your talent brand. Whether you do it, some people do it more effectively than others, but ultimately that's your anchor. Like Suncor says, a lot of their traffic and a lot of their external outreach, whether it's online, offline, whatever, it's to get people back to the career site. What are they going to find when they get there? Are they going to learn about what it's really like to be an employee at your organization? Are they going to learn about what a career path might look like? Are they going to see employees? Will there be video? Will there be compelling content? If they happen to get there via a mobile device, are they going to actually be able to navigate your career site? Is it mobile optimized? So these are all really important things to think about that I think a lot of times when organizations think about building a talent brand, it becomes really daunting. And they think, oh, it's social media, it's this and that. It doesn't have to be. You can use the tools you have already. And job descriptions, lastly, job descriptions as a whole, okay, this is quiz time. How many of you feel that most job descriptions out there suck? Okay, pretty much the whole room. I agree. They don't have to. They don't have to. Yes, some of us work in organizations where there's compliance reasons and they have to say certain things and not other things, but why can't they be a little more lively? Why can't they have some of that, marketing pizzazz and really tell a story? Why can't they embed photos? Why can't they embed video? Why can't they include infographics? I was hiring a recruiting manager, or attempting to. The position got cut. Again, I pounded sand. But I created an infographic for the job description. And I posted that on my blog, and I had 1,200 hits in less than a week, and tons of amazing applicants. And it was because people were seeing something they hadn't seen before. And to me, that infographic was culturally relevant with the kind of person that I was looking to hire, a creative, innovative recruiter, and it drew that kind of audience. So keep that in mind. This just kind of gives you an example of what engagement looks like. When you've got a strong talent brand and you're interacting with your fans, again, these are all examples of Twitter, it's a variety of things. You've got people spreading your jobs. You don't have to have 20,000 followers on Twitter to get good traction on your jobs. You can use hashtags, you can use your employees to amplify that messaging. We've found tremendous, Twitter specifically, since it's an open platform, we've found a lot of success from Twitter. I mentioned it's our #4 source of hire. We've hired a lot of passive candidates. That's the buzzword, right? We're all talking about passive candidates. They're sexy, they're great. We hired a lot of them, but it's because they're not on job boards, they're not on career sites, they're on LinkedIn, they're on Twitter, they're on Facebook, so you can reach them there. And so once you have that done and you're managing your program, the next step is really important, is to measure and optimize. So you're doing this work. How's it working? What are the results? So again, for us, we looked at a couple things. We looked at performance metrics with a focus on source of hire. Where are our applicants coming from? Where are our hires coming from? And through that, we're able to determine that, again, our big three, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, we're all in our top 10 sources of both applicants and hires. And for us, again, I think with social media, when you talk about metrics, there's the hard metric piece. There's also a risk with social media. And that risk is, if you launch social media and launch a social media campaign because your boss told you to, and you're not actively managing it, or you're just using it as a platform to share your jobs and broadcast your jobs, you're not listening to your fans, you're not engaging with them, you're not interacting with them, you have the chance to piss people off. And if you saw, Chris Hoyt's presentation, he talked about if people have a bad candidate experience, they're 40% likely to walk away from your brand. The same thing goes with social media. If you're not engaging and interacting with your audience, you have a chance to turn them off your brand. So, and again, from a ROI standpoint, I'd mentioned that we had saved $100,000 in job boards. You saw the reach of social media, and then for us, a lot of these efforts generated a lot of press in our social media work, which got more people aware of our brand, which got more people aware of our hiring, which led to more candidates.
Thanks, Lars. Oh. Technology's not my friend. Oh, there we go. So do you know how many people do you think follow Lars on Twitter? Just sort of guess. One person. Do you think it's 100 or 1,000 or 2,000? What is it? 7,000 people follow you on Twitter. Basically, my mom follows me on Twitter. So if you're going to sign up for anyone after, you should follow Lars. It's great stuff. So now the measure and optimize step. So isn't it nice of us to develop a catchy 4-step framework and really throwing in step 4 is everything you have to do after the first 3 steps that's going to go on forever and ever, which is really, once your program is launched, how are you going to tell what's working, what's not working, what's new, what's innovative for as long as you need to hire people, really. What we do at Suncor is really look at our brand 2 ways. We look at it at a very high level. So what are we doing around our value proposition work, and is it being effective? Are we driving traffic to our website? Are people interested in finding out more about Suncor? So very high level, very macro stuff. And this is an example of some data that we put on an infographic that Lauren actually creates. So in about 4 seconds, she'll kick me and then I'll say, please explain this better than me. So we talk about what are the top tweets that we send out on Suncor Careers, and we actually used a tweet, a job tip to make sure that people were using their LinkedIn profile effectively, and that was really, that was great. In addition, we talked about the number of hires that were influenced to take a new job at Suncor because of our presence on LinkedIn. We look at the reach factors. All of this we get from our impact reporting. How many people are following us on our different social media sites, and we're seeing some really great success. Because of the people that we're looking to hire, though, it can't just be our social media presence. So we need to look at how we are reaching out to people at events. They're still really important to us. So I sat in a great presentation yesterday, and someone was talking about events maybe not being so effective. For us, they are. They continue to be. Print continues to be effective for us because we're looking for people that aren't completely online. So make sure you understand where your audience is listening, where they're showing up, so you can be part of that conversation. And data matters. So I'm sure when Lars explained what he had for his team of 2, we're a team of 2 as well. And Lauren does most of the work, really. So, we're really a team of 1.5. I work part-time. And there's a lot of stuff that you can get done by being very influential and reaching out into your company to help get you data. So we work closely with our marketing team. They give us some information, our e-business team, we get Google Analytics data. They really help us understand who's clicking through and visiting our website, which Lauren described as the nerve center for applications to our organization. And it's really helping us understand where we're being effective. And I'm sure your organizations are the same. We're not here and making this campaign because it's a fun thing to do. It's a strategic business thing to do. And hiring people to the organization is very strategic. It's very strategic for us. So much so that if we don't have someone that's driving one of those heavy equipment haulers, we can leave a lot of money on the table because we're not producing the revenues that we should be producing. So we have to ensure that we're getting data in front of the right people in our company. Is there anything you wanted to add from the data piece? Okay. So what's next? I think with that, I feel like we really skip over that step really quickly. The other thing that I found from being at a conference like this is really talking about what are you learning from other folks. So I have been thrilled to sit in about 3 different presentations and pick up some tips that we want to take back to our organization. I love the guy from Pepsi this morning. I thought he was fantastic. I love that coffee idea of just being able to utilize a network inside your organization to be successful when you don't have all of that head count, which rarely any of us do. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tabitha. Those were the 4 steps that we come up with, and if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Great, thank you. So just to wrap it up quickly, going back to basics, so defining a talent brand. Suncor and NPR really looked at the strengths and challenges that they faced every day. The second part, around gaining executive buy-in, there was 2 different approaches that both Lars, Lauren and Stephanie took, but at the end of the day, they got their leadership on board and rallied around the initiative. Third is develop and execute. So at the end of the day, get out there, take intelligent risk, and don't be afraid to pilot and really come back and optimize. And once again, putting those key performance metrics in place are really key to success. So I do want to thank the 3 of you for being so open and honest throughout the session. It's been really great and refreshing to really understand your strategy. So what I'm going to do is actually open it up to Q&A, because we are running a little bit behind time. So I'll open up to the floor.
As a team of 3 and being nonprofit, I mean, for me, I have a similar situation. I have a very small team, and we do a lot with LinkedIn. I've been hesitant to get involved in Twitter because of just the amount of work it might entail and making sure I have the ability to follow up. So who at NPR is actually handling all the responses from Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn? Is it coming through marketing? Is it all coming through your group?
Everything, Facebook's a little different because that's primarily led by our marketing team. But if you look at NPR Jobs, if you look at the NPR Life Tumblr, if you look at the hashtag campaigns we have like NPR Life and Pub Jobs, that's me. I don't delegate that to anybody. And part of it is, for me, social media, I think, is something you have to be kind of personally interested and curious about. It's a hard thing to delegate. I tend to, struggle with delegation sometimes, but I have a team of 2, and they're very talented recruiters, but they're just not as passionate about social media. And for me, I would rather, and granted, I have German DNA, so I'm very efficient with my time. I've learned how to be really efficient. So I manage my time in a way that it doesn't become overwhelming. I'm very disciplined with the time that I dedicate towards social media, because I'm also managing a team. I'm also recruiting myself for jobs. I'm dealing with different talent and HR projects that we have within the organization. So, branding and social media is just a piece of my role, but it can be done. It's just a matter of, I think, Twitter in particular, it's a platform that a lot of people are not, if you're not an avid user, you don't really know where to start, and it can be intimidating. Like, I don't want to tweet about that yummy donut that I had. Like, who cares? You don't need to tweet. You can actually just follow people, learn, see how people interact with each other. For people that aren't at this conference right now, the hashtag is #InTalent. There are tens of thousands of tweets coming out from this conference with that InTalent hashtag. So people all around the world are able to participate. They're able to see what's being shared, what's being talked about. And so I generally recommend people, especially if they're considering Twitter, follow corporate recruiting accounts like Starbucks Jobs and NPR Jobs. I mean, there's a lot of good ones, and just see how they interact with their fans. But it can be done, even if it's you doing it. You just have to be disciplined with your time.
Yeah.
Metrics and data is really important to get the executive buy-in. So it's so important. So how do you define quality of hire? That was one of your metrics.
So it's based on turnover. So for us, that stat is probably a little. I don't place a lot of emphasis on it because, again, we've only really incorporated social media into our talent strategy for the past 2 years. So hopefully we're not hiring people that are bailing after 2 years. So I think as time goes by, we'll be able to get a better sense of, do we find stronger longevity with candidates that we're bringing in through social media? The reason that there's an expectation that we do is with social media, there's the direct recruiting aspect. There's also the strong, again, talent branding aspect. So one of the things that we really work hard to do is to show our culture, to show it very openly. And we do that to attract the kind of people that are drawn to that. We also do that to repel the kind of people that aren't. Part of employer branding is having people self-select themselves out of candidacy, and you want that. But that's, it's a stat that we're going to track, but I think we're still fairly young where it's hard for that to have a lot of meaning yet. Some back here?
Down the back.
Should we line up at the mics?
So you spoke about data from your impact report or impact reporting. How do you get all that data together? Do you have tools internally that you use, or is it just somebody looking at all the numbers on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn?
Oh, I just click a button and it just does it. No, it's
Which
really,
button?
really messy. I would say I'm really jealous of Lars, and I've learned a lot from listening to him speak. We have a lot of issues with our applicant tracking system. It really doesn't give us the kind of data that we need, that I would like to have. So I'm really working in Excel every month, pulling in my impact report, pulling in my Hootsuite reports on what kind of engagement and click-throughs there were, looking at the Google Analytics report that the e-coms team gives me. I'm pulling that all together to kind of paint the picture of where we were in market and what we did, and try to cobble that together to relate to how many people we brought into the organization that month.
So what would you recommend for somebody who wants to pull all those pieces together and starting out with a small sort of campaign, if you will?
Yeah, so if you're not on Hootsuite to manage your social recruiting, that's a great tool, or there's other ones like TweetDeck that are similar. That's a great place to start rolling up at least all your social media analytics. I would go to Google Analytics to get all the web analytics. And then honestly, I just use Excel, and it's a little bit painful, but once you kind of get the first month or two going, you're just plopping in the numbers and going and tracking the success month over month. So there's tons of data. You're right, it can be overwhelming, but the reporting's all there on the social media channels, on Hootsuite, in Google Analytics. You just need to sit down and work the work. I could show you my Excel document, but it'd probably just confuse you. It's just a mess, but it works.
I think this is for Lars. When you were talking about the internal things you could do and external relative to building a talent brand, could you be a little more specific, especially about the external? You mentioned LinkedIn heat mapping and focus groups. Could you explain a little more what that is?
Yeah, so, oh, sorry.
Well, no, I think LinkedIn heat maps and focus groups was Suncor.
Yeah, sorry, Lars. Unless you want to say it.
I would like to use LinkedIn heat maps. Back to you.
So on LinkedIn Recruiter, if you have that access, there's just so much data in there to get at. It's unbelievable. So we use that when we were looking at, okay, we want to hire heavy equipment operators for our operations. We did a quick search in LinkedIn Recruiter, heavy equipment operator. It starts to show you how many people are in Alberta, how many people are in British Columbia. And then you can get down to the city level, so you can kind of start to really see where the large populations of those key people are, so that when you need to do a big push for something, where you might want to geographically target your messaging. So that's how we use LinkedIn to heat map. You can heat map by school, by industry, by location. There's so much data when you really start to look in there. It's pretty awesome. And then with focus groups, we did use a research firm when we were doing our research. We did have a bit of funds for that, but honestly, you can do focus groups. You could even use LinkedIn to reach out to people that you might be interested in looking at recruiting down the line, and invite them to come in and buy them a coffee if they'll give you some feedback on your company and kind of your competitors and what makes your company special. So there's lots of creative ways to start doing that research and getting those key learnings to build your talent brand from.
And I think your employees are your best resource for understanding what it's like to work there. So we're very fortunate to have low turnover rates and a highly engaged workforce who love to tell us their experiences. All of us have that. All of us have that access to our employees. And I think it is a bit of an evolution of where we want to take things to the next level in terms of using employees more as our ambassadors and reaching out into their networks.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie, Lauren, and Lars. Thanks.